Hi everyone, welcome to my second class, Rules and Tools of Storyboarding. So now we're going to be covering some aspects of visual storytelling and the tools we use to achieve a great sequence. So let's talk about visual storytelling. So basically we have 7 visual components in visual storytelling, which is line, shape, tone, color, space, movement, and rhythm. Each of these components can have contrast, difference, or affinity, similarity. Contrast equals greater visual intensity, and affinity equals lesser visual intensity. So I'm sharing all of you to you guys because I think they're very important elements in visual storytelling. And to show that, I would like to do a little tutorial here. So if you go to Photoshop here, I'm gonna just share little thoughts on visual component of our visual component line. So you see here there's a horizontal, a vertical, and a diagonal, right? If I have a sequence, for example, that you're just gonna see horizontal shots, like horizontal, horizontal, horizontal. There's a lesser visual intensity, or what we can call affinity. So there's an affinity in here. It's a greater affinity. But if I add uh, a vertical, a horizontal and a vertical, you're gonna the affinity is not as strong, and you actually have a higher visual intensity. A contrast, like you see here. So greater visual intensity, contrast. In this case here, we have a horizontal, vertical, horizontal, and a diagonal. So with these combinations, we see a higher visual intensity. So here, the visual intensity here is much greater than this, and this one is, of course, much greater than this one. So being greater, having a greater visual intensity doesn't mean it's a better or anything like that, but you have to use these tools. If depending on what you want to convey, if you want to convey something more neutral, I would use this, lesser visual intensity. But then if you want to do something that's very dynamic, there's a lot of you want to make people sit on the edge of their seat, so I would use greater visual intensity. And the more you vary those elements, the visual components, which are line, shape, tone, color, space, movement, and rhythm, the higher is going to be the intensity, the visual intensity. So to share a few examples, I would like to show to staging. So what is staging? Staging is a method where you it's a presentation of an idea in the clearest way possible. So for example, I'm presenting this idea here of these people all in a museum, in a gallery, looking at paintings, and it's just really like, it's confusing, don't know where to look at. But if I group everything, it's much clearer, what I see, and it's much more appealing, much more interesting to look at. In this case here, you see two characters saying goodbye, for example, and you see the train passing by, in the distance. This shot is good, but if I want to convey something that has more, it has, it's more intimate, I will go to this shot here. So there's much more intimacy between the two. In this case here, you see Superman lifting a car in the air, in the sky. And this pose here, it's really neutral. You don't tell me too much. It's kind of boring. But then if I put the camera a little lower, you're gonna see it's a much more heroic. What I sell here, it's much more. There's much more visual intensity here. So you see all these diagonal lines. And so this is much. There's much more intensity in this shot than in this. So this is just a little bit of staging. And I would like to talk about difference of flat space and deep space. So this is a flat space. You see this, everything is horizontal and everything's there's not too much perspective going on, it's really flat, so we call flat space. But then as we lower the camera, like you have more, when you have more angles, you see the progression going on. So in this shot, maybe there's two gangsters having pasta in an Italian restaurant, and then they have start having a dialogue, and then you see that's actually some kind of ambush, And then from this shot, we jump to this, which is a much intense shot, and it's a lot of diagonal lines. The camera is really low, and you see this strong diagonal right here, another diagonal, another diagonal in this direct. So this is a much deeper, so we call it deep space. So flat space, deep space. So now we're going to jump again to our presentation. And we're going to talk about flat space versus deep space in some shots of films we've seen. So this, it's a good example of, you see the diagonals coming towards this round shape, it shows a great visual intensity. So it's a very, there's a lot of depth, flat, this shot is really flat, everything horizontal, vertical, there's not too much perspective going on, it's very flat, called a flat space. Flat space, very dynamic, you see all the verticals, coming toward, like in this direction here, and you see when the camera is tilted a little, to give even more diagonals, and so this shot here, you see it's really flat space, flat space. You see a lot of that in this Stanley Kubrick film, Shining, and you see like how everything, all the perspective coming from, everything, 1 point perspective, you see all these diagonal lines merging this direction, Flat space, you see it is a deep space shot, and then you see that how low the camera is, and you see all the verticals, down, Again, talking about grouping, you see how well grouped Wes Anderson shots are, So everything is really clear, You see these three grouping things here, It's really great. Here you see another shot, deep space, photo perdition. Another Wes Anderson, really well grouped, flat space. He loves using flat space. Another great way of showing composition, very well grouped. Here you see, all the, deep space, flat, you see everything very symmetrical, and there's not too much perspective going on. Very deep, You see that another factor that helps this shot is also the contrast of color, you see the tone of there's a lot of the blacks are really blacks and the whites are really whites, so there's no affinity in this shot, it's all about contrast, even the diagonals are, so all the elements are supporting this shot to be very dynamic. Here you see in another shot, Touch of Evil, very, look at the size of him, in comparison to this guy. He's very powerful, very, you can tell perspective through that too, the difference of the size of the, another shot, very deep, in a lot of, deep space and a lot of angles, diagonals. So that's it. So I hope everyone enjoyed this class, and please try to use these tools in your assignments as you board. Please try to explore all the elements, of line and flat space, deep space, to really show like convey an idea the best way as possible. So I hope this class was helpful. I see you very soon. Thank you.